Okay, that was 60 seconds. Now, what I'd like you to do is to share with someone near you the feelings, okay? You don't have to share the behaviors, but the feelings I'd like you to share. Introduce yourself. All right, that was another 60 seconds. So what are some of the things, still talking about it. So as you, what a strategy I use in class often when I have students share with one another is I'll say, what did you hear? Because sometimes students are not always comfortable sharing what they said. I've found that faculty tend to want to name, well, Stephanie said, you don't have to do that. You don't have to say who your partner was. But what did you hear, or if you are willing to share, what did it feel like? What were some of the emotions when you were thriving? Uh-huh. There you go.
That he was living in a place where people knew his name and he knew them, and just walking to the grocery store, 5 people would say hi and I would know them. So the idea of being known.
Being known, okay. And what did that feel like? What's that emotion? I don't know. Felt good. So it was a positive emotion. Okay. Might find it hard to find. Feeling probably a sense of contentment, maybe even some joy, perhaps, there. Okay. What else?
Excited and energized.
Okay. Excited, energized. What else? It feels easy, so it kind of flows or comes naturally. It's like, I could do this all day. All right. Uh-huh.
I mean, you didn't get to me, but I can say I was running my own business and I didn't feel thwarted. And I felt like if I could think it and I had courage, I could do it. And,
All right.
and so that changes when you're working.
Yeah.
In an
Right.
institution and everything.
Right.
You can come up with great ideas and then it's like, well, we'll present that to the faculty council in 6.5 months. And, so I mean,
So what?
I
Yeah.
understand why it's there, but
Yeah.
it does,
Yeah. Yeah.
You kind of feel like you can't really make.
So what's that feeling of feeling like the sky's the limit? If I can think it, I can do it.
It's exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So that energy piece. Any other emotion that you heard or described yourself? Yeah. Well, when we look at kind of the ABCs of thriving, the A is for affect. Energy is what we hear most often. That there's this energized sense that I could do this all day. I lose track of time. It flows. I feel I might be exhausted, but it's a good tired because you still feel energized by it. It's always positive. Did any of you hear any negative emotions? Yeah, we've never heard any negative ones. So they're positive emotions that center primarily around joy. And which is not the same as happiness, because happiness is often circumstantial, right? But joy is coming from the inside, and it is a more permanent state of being. Now, when you thought about the behaviors, and I'm not going to ask you to share those, I'm simply going to share what we found in our research. And you see if your behaviors match this. So as we talk to people who are thriving, they always talked about what they were doing with other people and that they were involved in something. Rarely is thriving a solitary pursuit. Now, sometimes people, faculty in particular, will say, it was when I was writing. And I'm like, okay, but if you were on a desert island for 6 months writing, would you be thriving? You know, oftentimes part of the writing process is sharing it with others, you know, and the ideation phase, when you're thinking about it and structuring it, you're having conversations with people. So even writing is rarely solitary. But often the behaviors are about making a difference. I feel like what I did mattered. And I was connected to other people while I was doing it. Does that match some of the things that you were thinking about or heard? And then what was going on in your head? This is the toughest one, although faculty should be better at this than students to know what's going on in your head. But what kinds of things are you thinking when you're thriving? A little harder to access. Okay, there's new ideas happening. Okay. Uh-huh.
You think you're not thinking about it, it's yourself. It's assuming that there's no time for navel gazing or, feeling sorry for yourself.
Uh-huh. Okay. So your focus is on other people, yeah. So what we've found is that there's also a mindfulness characterizes the cognitions when you're thriving. Mindfulness is when you are fully present in the moment. You are soaking it in. You are fully there. Your mind is not on the past and things that have happened to you in the past, and it's not on the future and all the things you have to do tomorrow or next week. You are fully in the present, noticing what's happening and able to take different perspectives and see things in a new way, and meaning making is happening. You're making sense of things. Things are falling into place. Ideas are germinating, right? And the reframing is a key part of thriving, and that is because it's not that things are great all the time, but when you are thriving and something happens, a glitch occurs, how do you think about it? Oh my gosh, it's the end of the world, I might as well quit today. You see it as a bump in the road, right? And you say, how can I make this a learning opportunity? How can I see this as a temporary setback? And in fact, one of the things we tell students is when you interview successful people, wildly successful people, and you ask them to tell you the story of their success, 97% of the time, they will start with a story of failure. They start their story about failure, and it's about what they did and how that was a turning point for them on the road to success. So reframing is a key part of this. Now, for me as a Christian, what I love about the research that I do is that there is this natural integration of who I am as a person of faith and what I get to research and talk to people about, even on campuses that are not faith-based. And I don't put John 10:10 on the screen, but I am researching what I think Jesus was talking about when he said, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. Right? And so in the Greek, one of the images is this overflowing glass, but another translation of that word abundantly is more than is necessary for survival. And that's what I'm researching right now with students and then shifting into faculty as well to say, what is it that gets us out of survival mode? What's the least I have to do to get promoted or to get by and to think, what if I really came to life? What if I really experienced kind of this abundant living that we've been promised in Scripture? So Marty Seligman, who's at University of Pennsylvania, has written a book called Flourish. Now, actually, I started my research on thriving before he wrote his book Flourish, but I want to use his, because he has studied adults, and so my research has been focused on college students, but he's focused on adults and have said these are the 5 aspects of flourishing that mean, and this is, I think you have this on your handout, that these are the things that make for a life well lived. That at the end of life, when you look back, although you shouldn't have to wait till then, but any moment as you look at your life and you feel like, I'm really flourishing, these things are happening. And you can remember it with the acronym PERMA, and it starts with the positive emotions. So when you are flourishing, there are these positive emotions, joy, energy, etc. You are engaged, and that is you're involved, you're connected, you are doing something productive with your life. You are having rewarding relationships, so people know, they notice when you're there or when you're not. Relationships are feeding your soul. There is meaning in what you do, particularly in your work. but sometimes that might be outside of work in hobbies and in volunteering and things like that as well. But you feel a sense of meaning and purpose in your life when you're flourishing. And then finally, there is also accomplishment. You are doing good work. It's not just meaningful, you're actually doing it well. So we have studied this in students. It's a little bit different. We don't look at positive emotions as much with students. We actually look at positive perspective, which is this optimistic explanatory style that I was talking about earlier, the reframing. And instead of meaning, because what we find in college students, they haven't figured that out yet. Okay? They have not. And so for them, we actually call it diverse citizenship, and that is that they're very open to new ideas and multiple perspectives, and they want to make a difference in the world. So as we think about this for faculty, I want to show you some of the pathways to thriving for students, and what I want you to think about is, what is the parallel, or is there a corollary for us as faculty? So where I'm going with this is to say, what are the pathways? So we know that among students, we can predict their thriving by knowing things like, are they involved on campus? Do they feel like they fit within their major? That predicts thriving. Do they find that faculty are sensitive to the needs of diverse learners? That is a very strong predictor in our students of color, but also in white students as well. And it's this openness, this multiple perspectives that they're hearing in the classroom, and a personal interest in students. A huge predictor of thriving for college students is how much rewarding, positive interaction they have with faculty, not the frequency, it's the quality. Okay? So the frequency doesn't predict, but the quality of that interaction is predictive for students. And then spirituality. And spirituality is twice as important a predictor for students of color as it is for white students, whether that's a faith-based or secular campus. Their levels of spirituality are highly predictive of whether they're able to thrive in a given environment. And then institutional integrity. This is, does the institution deliver on its promises? Are your expectations being met? Do you find that the institution accurately portrayed itself during the admissions process? Students of color will sometimes say, yeah, I think every student of color was on your brochure. That's not my experience when I walk on campus. So institutional integrity is, are you who you say you are? And do you deliver on these implicit promises? And then finally, the sense of community is the most powerful pathway to thriving for students. Okay? When they feel like they belong and can make a contribution and are connected to people on campus and are working with people on campus toward big goals. So those are the pathways for students. So my question for you is, what do you think the pathways might be for faculty? And I do not know the answer. So this is an exploratory conversation to say, what should we be measuring? If we're trying to say what predicts whether faculty are thriving in a given environment, what should we be looking at that might have, if you know this about students, what might be the parallel? What do you think? Yeah?
I think the institutional integrity, but more in the sense of like, when they say how someone gets promoted, is that really how you get promoted? Or like those kind of things?
So we might say, around, I'm going to put FES here for us, but the clarity and congruence. Is this really how it happens? Okay. Yeah?
I think whether or not my teaching or my research matters. I don't know if that means institutionally or with my peers, or that it makes a difference. That what I'm doing makes a difference.
That what you're doing makes a difference. Yeah. Okay. So a perception that your role matters. And Jen Livingston did her dissertation on faculty engagement, which is a bit different question. And what she found is that engagement, feeling energized by what you do as a faculty, and thriving is a bit bigger than that, was very role specific. And that faculty would be very engaged in teaching, perhaps, but not as much in research, or very engaged in the servant leader piece, but not as much. Yeah. And that it was pretty rare to find someone who was engaged in all the roles. So the perception that your role matters or that you're making a difference, okay? What else? What are kind of comparable campus experiences for us? Yeah?
Well, I think the sense of community
Yeah.
is important. When I go to other campuses and I don't see what we have here, that's one of the things that I come back with is our community.
Okay. Okay. So sense of community you think would still be a superhighway, perhaps. Okay. Yeah?
Autonomy,
Okay.
at least for some people.
Now, psychologists would say that's the heart of intrinsic motivation, is feeling like I can do it, that I have the freedom to do it, and that I'm in relationship with people who care that I do it, right? So we might even use self-determination theory out of psychology and say, you know what, that's a key piece of being able to thrive, okay? So having that freedom or autonomy. Anything else? Uh-huh.
Relationship with colleagues, something that might fit sort of with the community as well, although it's separated like student faculty.
Okay, and would you say that relationships with students would matter? I mean, that would be an interesting question, wouldn't it? You know, to say, well, how involved are you with your students and how satisfied are you with the kind of interactions that you have? Okay.
I think another parallel to this would be instead of like faculty sensitivity to diverse learners, more like dean or administrative sensitivity to diverse faculty.
Yeah, yeah. So administrators' sensitivity to diverse faculty, okay. And parallel to that, I think, is also this idea of openness to multiple perspectives. Because it's not just that I'm sensitive, it's that I'm also acting in ways that convey that. And one of the key ways with students is when you demonstrate that you want to hear multiple perspectives. And I would think as faculty, we probably are the same, that we'd like to know that the community is open to multiple perspectives, perhaps, right? Multiple perspectives. Anything else that comes to mind? Yeah?
Look at fit within the major, I think, fit within an institution.
Okay, so institutional fit. What about departmental fit? Yeah, maybe. Or school fit. So department or school, if we're thinking specifically about APU. Okay, this gives us some good examples and good things to think about as we think about thriving, or flourishing, as Seligman calls it. And I use the word thriving because there's an academic and intellectual component I wanted to capture that is not in the research around flourishing as much. So as we think about it, you can either think individually or you can think communally. And so I want to give you a couple of, and that's what your handout is on, is kind of these individual tips that come from, all right, what would I do personally if I wanted to thrive here no matter what? What are some things I can do? And then what I want us to spend a little bit of time talking about with each other is what communally could we do about that? So cultivating positive emotions is, if positive emotions are a part of flourishing, some of the best ideas about this are do what you do best. Can you play to your strengths? Can you find creative ways to do that? To say, how can I spend more of my time? Marcus Buckingham says a good job is where 75% of the time you are doing what you love and do best. 25% of the time, we all have to do the grunt work. We do have to grade papers, okay? So I always say I would teach for free, and they pay me the big bucks to grade papers. So, but thinking about how can I structure my time so that about 3/4 of the time I am able to do the kinds of things that I really enjoy doing. Think about what brings you joy, and then can you bring more of that into your environment? If you like being outdoors, can you bring plants in? Can you have pictures of the outdoors in your office space? If there are things that little things that don't cost a lot that bring you joy, can you find a way to do that every day? Okay? So if you enjoy reading, you say, I just don't have time to read. Say, you know what, when I'm done with my work, I'm going to spend 30 minutes before I go to bed every night just reading for pleasure, just because that's what I love. So it's making the time for those things, being able to reframe that when you hit the roadblocks, you can go, temporary setback. Okay, this is not the end of the deal here. And gratitude. Positive psychologists in particular would say the best way to have more positive emotions in your life is to count your blessings. And that is and they would actually say, write a thank you note. Don't just think about what you're grateful for, but actually send a note to somebody for something that you are grateful that they did or that you appreciate. Engagement, this involvement and curiosity, and I used pictures of children all the way through here because I think children know how to thrive. They don't have to be told how to do that, right? They just naturally are curious. So create. And if you can't do it in your work, find ways either through hobbies, through sports, through recreation. And then when you have something that's interesting and challenging to you, minimize the distractions. Shut off your email. Shut off social media. And just engage. Become absorbed. For me, this is the secret to my research, is that I have to shut everything else off. I think a lot about it, and it takes me a long time to get to the place where I'm ready to write, but when I do, it's like the world comes to an absolute halt, everything stops, and I do nothing but write. So minimizing distractions can be part of that. Rewarding relationships. Well, you're here at work. Most of your life, most of your waking hours are spent here, which is a little depressing maybe, but that's true for most people. Your work is your primary place to spend your time. So for heaven's sakes, cultivate the relationships with people here. Whether that's in your department or across departments, but also strengthen your family ties. Make time for the significant people in your life, finding ways to connect with them. Take the initiative. A lot of times we're like, I don't have any friends, I'm lonely, I don't have anything to do. Well, someone else is probably feeling that way too. So take the initiative to invite somebody to lunch, to say, come over, let's do coffee together. When you take the initiative, then actually, as you said, it's when you focus on something other than yourself. And when we interview students, they say this over and over again. They will say, thriving is not about me. It is about the other person. So what am I doing to invest in another person and to focus in what brings out their best? The meaning piece, cultivating meaning, I think can happen when you can connect to a cause that's important to you. Again, focusing beyond yourself, giving back, volunteering. I think when you strengthen your spiritual connections, that also is a way of cultivating meaning in your life. And I put radical compassion here. Dennis Sheridan is doing research on radical compassion. And we went through an 8-week series with him, which I highly recommend. I think he's going to do it again. But, we think of compassion as working to alleviate the suffering of another person. But radical compassion is also promoting thriving in another person, even someone who drives you nuts. That's really the compassionate action, to think, what can I do to make life better for you? Something to think about. Can bring meaning to your life. And then cultivating accomplishment. I think most of us have a to-do list, so I'm actually going to say, well, maybe we should reduce or not be consumed by our to-do lists and our busyness. That busyness is not a signal of your worth, and I have to say this to myself all the time because I have achiever as one of my talent themes, and so I have a to-do list with rollover minutes, right? So it's a never-ending thing, and in fact, at the end of the day, I write things on the list that I did so I can cross it off and feel that sense of accomplishment, right? So for some of us, what we need to do is not be as consumed by that, but to think, well, what are realistic, meaningful goals? Am I just doing to do, or am I doing the meaningful, significant things? And anything is going to get better with practice. That the more I practice something, so I might dread writing, but the more I practice it, instead of putting it off, the more I can feel a sense of accomplishment. Now that's the individual piece. That's okay, even if nobody does anything else here are some things that I can do. But I want to say the soil matters. the soil we are planted in matters. So what I'd like you to spend just a few moments talking with the people around you about is what kind of environment here at APU would help you thrive? What kind of environment? How would you characterize it? And so I just talk with the people around you in 3s, 4s, 2s, whatever works for you, and then I'll ask you to debrief that. All right, I'm going to call you back and process a little bit with you. Okay. Clearly, we have some ideas, gauging the energy in the room. So what are some things that you talked about in your group? What kind of environment would help you thrive? Now, notice I didn't ask what keeps you from thriving, because, that doesn't help us. What helps us is to know, but what would it take, right? So what are some of the things you mentioned? What is it about this environment? Trust. What do you mean by that? What would that look like to you?
There's two ways, so feeling trusted and
Just that there's a mutuality in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
feeling that you are trusted, but also being able to trust other people. Okay. What else? Uh-huh.
Well, so for me, it's empowerment, right?
Empowerment.
As a faculty member in a small department, and we're revamping it. There's every bit of input that we have really matters a lot.
Okay. So feeling empowered to do the work that you're called to do. Okay.
Having our strengths and our time respected.
What does that mean? Like, what would that look like?
So, like, if someone is, like myself, even though I'm a scientist, I really love teaching and doing service for the university, even more so than research. And so being able to allocate my time in those areas would be a way of respecting, my time and my strengths.
Okay. So what I'm also hearing there is it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it really is saying, can we take almost an individualized approach or have that flexibility of saying, you know what, part of your work here, you get to say what that is. Okay. Uh-huh.
I think similar to what you were saying about undergraduates and their mindset, just like compared to some other places I've been, like just having a very optimistic, can-do sort of like you want to do something, people say, we'll make it work. That's been my experience so far.
Okay.
It's been very helpful.
So I'm going to say an optimistic attitude, but I'm also hearing support and resources for your ideas. Okay. Okay. Uh-huh.
Having collaborative physical spaces, where we
Yeah.
can come together, open spaces where we can come together.
Like a faculty lounge.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would just settle for my faculty offices being in the same building with one another. Yeah. Or a window. Okay. Yeah, are there spaces where we can do community together? Yeah.
Yeah, and we would connect that also to the respecting of my time and strengths, realizing people like to work in different ways. So we all have these individual offices, but for some people, they work really well in individual offices. For other folks, they work better elsewhere. I go to Starbucks to get anything done. It's weird. Go into activity to actually be able to focus.
Okay.
And so a co-working space like that,
All right.
so not even like a lounge, but a co-working kind of space. It's similar to, some of the spaces that they have, that you can go, you can go subscribe to, work there. They have different kinds of spaces, different sorts of reading rooms or desks.
Okay.
spaces like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm going to think about the respecting my time thing. AP was really good at calling us together. I mean, it's kind of freakishly good. They're always calling us together to have some kind of recognition or celebration. And sometimes I'm like, did I really need to be here for this? And so it seems to me that when you call us together, it's got to be fabulous or really good. There has to be substance as well as style. It can't just be, we're coming together because symbolically we're meant to come together because that's important. It's like, no, there got to be something tangible that I come away with that really made it worth my time.
So I call
They
that
don't need to be
purposeful.
patted on the back so
Yeah.
much.
Okay. So purposeful engagement is the word I use there, but. Now, if we weren't being recognized or celebrated, we would have a lot to say about that. So I want to put that in there to say that's an important element. But I hear what you're saying,
Yeah,
that it's like,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
make it more meaningful. So it's like, what would really, really be something that everybody could walk away with here that would be useful?
Right.
Or and I don't just mean pragmatically useful, but I mean, yeah, that was brilliant. That was a great, like
Right.
a speaker for faculty day.
Okay.
Can they be really good and not just okay?
Okay.
Can the liturgy, the worship we do together, be beautiful and not, just like banal?
Okay. All
And
right.
so I think that it's a university that we should set the bar high.
Set the bar very high.
Especially for, and so
Okay.
I'm going to carry this into, like faculty meetings. So much of meetings is just like meetings, and it's like how much of that really, really did we need to be there for? Could we just have sent around an email, and I really need to sit there for 2 hours?
Yeah. Well, Well, what I wonder about, so you know, I'm walking away with something that I can enact, or I feel fed spiritually. Sometimes, did you talk about input at all? Sometimes when I go to those things, I might think, I would have loved an opportunity to give some input into this instead of just listen. I don't know if you feel that way or if that's just me, but. Okay.
Absences due to illness or a break or vacation.
Okay.
It gets to be a little bit difficult to find that.
Right. So, yeah, and I think you guys have it pretty bad over there. In the sense of you are working year-round, crazy, crazy schedules. Yeah, yeah. So where I want to end is with focusing on sense of community, because I think a lot of what we talked about is encompassed in what it means to feel a sense of community about a place. And that is, and I've put it in these 4 quadrants because they're just easier to remember, and it summarizes the research very well. Membership is, do I feel like I belong here? Do I have a place at the table? Am I proud to work here? Okay? That's the membership piece, and you might kind of judge that for yourself along the way. Ownership is what I heard a lot of. And that is, do I feel like my voice matters? Do I have input? Does what I do matter? Is my contribution ever sought? And if I try to volunteer it, is it welcome? You know, do I feel like I have something to contribute here? The relationship is, as you said, something I think we do pretty well, and that is we've got a lot of celebrations and gatherings. So opportunities for positive interaction, celebrating together is an important part of community, and that may be something that we already do pretty well. And you could ask this in your department as well as for the university. And the research shows if you feel a sense of community in your department, you will thrive. And you don't have to wait on the university to create a sense of community. So that's the good news in this. And then the last piece is when you feel a sense of community, there's this partnership. And that is, it's not just I'm getting what I need from this place. It's also I am able to meet other people's needs by being in this space together. And we are working together toward meaningful big goals that really matter and that no one person can do alone. So a lot of it has to do with vision. You know, where are we going and how are we going to work together? What are ways that we partner together to get there? So as you think about, for some of us, our year begins in summer. For others of us as faculty, the summer is a time of a little bit more reflection and opportunity to at least get a little bit of breathing room. But as you think about the coming year, I want you to think about both the individual level. What can I do that I don't have to wait on other people to make it happen for me? What can I do to increase my likelihood of thriving? And primarily, it's make time for what's important and stop focusing on yourself. Focus on other people. Is that in a nutshell? But then to think, well, how do we create that, at least in our department? At least in the areas where I have some control. How can I promote the thriving of other people, and how can we work together to create a sense of community? And if each of our departments was creating a sense of community, guess what would happen? We would experience it at the university. Because eventually people want that. They look at what you've got and they're like, wow, I want to thrive. I want to feel that sense of community. And they'll begin to ask you, how do you do that? So my challenge to us as faculty is to say, let's take control of what we have control over. And let's say there are things that I can do personally and individually, but also within my span of care, to see that this is the kind of place that has a strong sense of community and that's able to thrive. So thank you very much. It is time to thrive. So I will entertain questions. I think we have 60 seconds. So yes.
How do you adapt at all any of this for someone, like say you have a student or faculty member who's struggling with like depression or anxiety or
Yes.
some sort of like mental thing
Right.
that makes all of this seem like completely accessible?
Yeah, so when a person is suffering from depression, for instance, now actually the reframing is the primary strategy that a cognitive behavioral therapist would use with a depressed person, which is to reframe how you think about things and to refocus your thinking. So actually the reframing piece is highly effective. Actually Marty Seligman again has said optimism is something that can be taught. So here's what I love about thriving. Every single piece of it is malleable. These are not personality traits. They are malleable qualities that you can change. And sometimes when people are suffering from disorders, we give the message, oh, you could change this if you wanted. And I don't want to put the blame or burden on a person who is suffering. What I am saying, it is changeable, and that may mean that the people who care for and love that person can get that person to the help that they need so that they can start reframing and take advantage of some of the things. And depression is very treatable, you know. Yeah. Other questions that you have? All right, well, thanks for taking time this morning to talk about this, and I hope that you have a great day and that you're able to thrive in your role. Oh, yes, sorry. Giving away something. A book, Thriving in Transitions. Yep, there you go. We'll get a book on thriving. It's about student thriving, but that should help you too. So let's see, 459-548.
That's me, Laura,
But you already have the book. All right, next one is 459-540. Yeah? All right. Thank you.